Now, most people in the church want steps. Give me these steps so I can radiate the glory of God. And so these steps, if I was to give you this text and get you in a group and say, I want you to come out with steps in order for you to radiate the glory of God, you probably would have come back with these 4 steps. The first one is fasting. If I fast 40 days and don't drink food or water for 40 days, that's the first step. The second step is going to be fellowship. As long as I'm fellowshipping with God, you will radiate the glory of God. The third step is I must be in the presence of God. And then the fourth step is I've got to be in the presence of the 10 Commandments. Those would have been the steps that the average person would come up with, and they would probably make millions of dollars in Christian bookstores selling these 4 steps to radiate the glory of God. Moses removed the veil going into the presence. Why? Because whenever you're in the presence of God, you're in His glory. This is an external glory that fades away. It fades away. This glory that Moses encountered faded away. When he came into God's presence, the glory was radiating off of him. But then when he left his presence, it began to fade away. So what do we do? What's the difference between Moses then and us today? Well, first of all, the Holy Spirit would come upon people in the Old Testament. He didn't go within them. That is so important to understand that. So Moses radiated, his face radiated, symbolizing the glory that belonged to the law and God's presence. But we don't stay in that glory. That's an external glory. And so move with me into the New Testament, 2 Corinthians, that he talks about this, and you can look at it with me in 2 Corinthians 3, 7 through 11. The old way, with laws etched in stone, led to death. Now, this is going to sound hard to many of you, but I want you to understand the law is considered the ministry of death. Most Christians think that if I live the law and do the law, I will be. And they're on the treadmill of religion. This law was called the ministry of death. It's holy, it's righteous, it is glorious, but it was the ministry of death. Let's read on. Though it began with such glory, now this law began with glory that the people of Israel could not bear to look at Moses' face. For his face shone with the glory of God, even though the brightness was already fading away. Now see, he's in the presence of God. He's in the presence of the 10 Commandments. But now, when he's out of the presence, the glory starts to fade away. Verse 8, shouldn't we, that's us, shouldn't we expect far greater glory under the new way? Now the Holy Spirit is giving life. See, the 10 Commandments could never give life. Only God can give life. Only Christ can give life. It's an impartation of Him being within us. So the law was bringing forth death. It showed us we could never get life from the law. So the law serves its purpose. But he goes on, he says, if the old way which brings condemnation was glorious, now he says the law not only brings death, but it brings condemnation. So if you are still living by the law, you're condemning yourself. You're living out death. It was never intended to be that way. It was a schoolmaster to take us to the life giver, to give his life in us, to live through us. And so it was glorious, but here we go. How much more glorious is the new way which makes us right with God? See, the new covenant makes us right with God. God stamps us with his righteousness. He imparts his righteousness to us. In fact, the first glory was not glorious at all compared with the overwhelming glory of the new way. So if the old way, which has been replaced, if the old way, which has been replaced, if it's been replaced, why are we still living that?